Happy Thanksgiving, my friends. My name is Thad Riley, and this is episode number 313 of the Thadcast. And I don't know where you are today. I don't know what you're doing, but it's probably different. It's probably different than most Thanksgivings have been. Maybe it's just a tweak or two, or maybe you're missing someone who maybe you lost someone in this past year. Maybe you're lost someone in a really tough way for you right now. Maybe one of your linchpins is gone of your life. And maybe you're separated from your family, or maybe some of your family is separated from you. And I don't know what it looks like for you. Ours is kind of fairly normal. It's just us and the kids in the house. And we'll have my mother-in-law over tomorrow. We'll do the whole thing tomorrow, not today. Today's a day for other things, apparently. And it just worked out that way. So we're good. We're good. We're very grateful. We're very grateful. And it's actually going to be a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm quite sure of it. In fact, it's wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving, and it's a wonderful life. And that, my friends, leads us into what we're going to talk about here today on the Thadcast. We're going to talk a little bit about the movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, It's a Wonderful Life, and the story of thankfulness that just exudes in this story, in this thankfulness for life. I think sometimes we forget that. I think we do. I think we go through the motions of everyday life and we can kind of forget how grateful we are for the life that we have, for the God-breathed life, and for the unique creation that God has made us. And you see in this movie, there's this character, George Bailey, and he's the star, if you know the movie. And George is going through a tough time. There was a mistake made, not George's, and somehow the villain of the movie ends up with $8,000 of George's money, and he's not supposed to have that money. And the bank examiner comes by and goes through George's money, and $8,000 is missing. So this looks like fraud. This looks like somebody robbed somebody. And George is the one his name's on the building, so he's the one who's held responsible for this. And he's probably just going to be carted off to jail. And this situation with this money consumes George. He is consumed by a situation. And it's really not multiple situations. It's a singular situation with finances that breaks this man. It causes him worry and stress that is huge. Okay, it's huge. It's just huge. And everything that is good in George's life all of a sudden goes to the back row. And this problem comes out front. And George's story is not unfamiliar to me or to you. How many times do we have a problem or an issue where it just booms into the front of our existence, right? And it takes over everything, and we feel horrible and ugly and just frustrated and depressed, and all these things hit us over this one thing. And it might even be money. It might be a relationship. You never know. I had a situation where I was really bummed out about something and stressed out about someone, and it was nothing. When I talked to them, it was like, no, you're okay. No big deal. And I'd screwed up on something, and they're like, no, you're fine. And I was fine. And that was it. But I didn't go to the extremes of George Bailey, because, see, George Bailey decides he wants to kill himself. So he goes to the river, to the bridge, and he's going to jump off into the river, and he meets a precarious fellow, this fellow named Clarence. But Clarence isn't just a fellow. Clarence is George's guardian angel. So Clarence, in a bizarre move, decides to throw himself in the river. George saves Clarence, and they're sitting around talking in their wet clothes. And while they're talking, Clarence explains who he is. And George, and him get in this conversation, George finally says, I wish I was never born. He shouts it out in this gruff voice, I wish I was never born. And Clarence says, yes, we can do something with that. So Clarence goes on to show George what the world around him would be like if George had never been born. And it is despair in so many ways. There's so much missing from so many people's lives. It really is. From friendships to people George had reached out to and said an encouraging word to or helped, to people that George smiled at every day. Obviously, his wife's entire life was 1,000% different, wasn't anything near as special as what it was when her and George were together as they were meant to be. And all of this is played out from George watching and observing his life. Because he's taking this giant step back and he sees all of a sudden all of these people that he loves that love him. And I know this momentary situation had caused George so much stress and so much difficulty, and it was the only thing he could see looming in his life. But what it wasn't was the truth. And the truth was that George loved many and was loved by many. Well, at the end of the story, George is kind of confused. Is this the new reality? What is going on here? And he can't get out of this like dream state with Clarence. And then all of a sudden, when he gets it, at this moment of just freaking out, he gets the whole thing and he gets his life back. Oh, the chills, I got them now. It's so good. And he runs in joy, and he shouts down the streets, "Merry Christmas, movie theater." He's yelling Merry Christmas to stores, and he goes in his house and he hugs his kids. And all of his friends show up at the end and they bring George money, like thousands of dollars. And George is free. But George isn't free because of the money. George is free because of love. Because of the love that he sowed with others. He was now reaping love in the moment where he needed it the most. And I'm an old sappy guy, but I kind of like that story. I kind of like that story because it reminds me of life. Of how many times you and I have this thing, this obstacle, this monster, and it's just this one thing. And it really shouldn't hold so much power over our hearts and our minds and our time, but it does. And we lose perspective. We lose perspective over the things that really matter in this life, like Jesus, like the God who breathed life into us in the first place, or our spouse who chose us, or our parents, or our children, or our friends. We are so deeply connected to people, we don't even realize how much difficulty there would be in our world today if we were gone. Would the world go on? Yeah, sure. I mean, listen, if I don't finish this episode and I drop dead right now, hey, it's been a great life. In fact, it's been a wonderful life. But there would be mourning, and it would be hard. I don't think anyone ever valued life more than Jesus. I think that was part of his anguish in the garden before he went to the cross. Because through all of the struggles that he had in his years of ministry, and he dealt with some folks and some stuff, he loved and was loved, just like you, and just like me, and just like George Bailey figured out in the end. He was fine to go to jail. He was just grateful for the people that he loved and cared about. And that's why it's a wonderful life. Because of love, not because of this stuff. And you know, that doesn't change. That doesn't change right now. Even in a pandemic, even in a crazy election, even in any of this, the love that God has for us and that we have for God and that families have for each other and the friends and all this stuff, none of this changes during a pandemic. We got some stuff to figure out. It might be stressful and tough at times, but that love hasn't changed a bit. You know, it brings me always back on Thanksgiving to this one passage. I memorized it when I was, I think, either 5 or 6 years old, something like that, maybe 7. I think it was 5 or 6. I'm betting on 6. And it's Psalm 100, and it says, "Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. Know ye that the Lord, he is God. It is he that has made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pastures. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him and bless his name. For the Lord is good. His mercy is everlasting. His truth endures through all generations." As we celebrate Thanksgiving, my friends, I encourage you to pause and to look at God's love for you, the love that you have for God, the love that others have for you, and the love that you have for them. And you will see, through all of the hardship and trials of this world, that it is indeed quite a wonderful life. Well, happy Thanksgiving, my friends. Time to go wake up the kids, get on the rain gear, and figure this thing out. It's going to be a mess, but we will be blessed. I kind of rhymed. I didn't mean for it to. It's okay. It's okay. Well, hey, listen, just in closing, as always, just a couple of key notes. First of all, if you have not joined our Facebook group for the Thadcast, please join today. We're on Facebook. You just got to answer a couple of questions that you won't be trolling folks or whatever, and you automatically get into the Facebook group for the Thadcast. Jump on in and join us, please. Also, if you can recommend this to a friend, that would be great, or on social media. And of course, as always, those ratings and reviews on iTunes can make all the difference for me and what I'm doing here at the Thadcast. Well, anyway, thank you for joining me here today. My hope and prayer is that you have a wonderful, thankful Thanksgiving. And just remember, it is a wonderful Thanksgiving here at the Thadcast, and I hope and pray that it is for you today too as well. Thank you again for joining me here, my friends. And until next time, may you be blessed.